I pulled out my phone to show my brother, and he was like, Christina, did you see that? I was like, what? He's like, you have almost 1 million views. I was
crazy.
Like, what? And then it was like, you'd get on like, I stared at it for like the rest of the night. And I was like, guys, look at all these.
Hi, I'm Reba Hervis, Artistic Director at Overshadowed Theatrical Productions. Welcome to this week's episode From the Wings. Joining me this week, we have my friend and wonderful associate, Christina White. So thank you, Christina, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Christina has helped us with costumes for 13 years?
Yeah. 13 years, maybe 14, because it was the year before I got married.
Oh,
so
right.
14 years.
As most of you know, we've been in business at Overshadowed for about 20 years. And when Christina first graduated from college, she came up here to be a teacher and stumbled upon my theater.
I love to sew, and I was working in college in a different department, and I found out they had a sewing department, and I could not fit any sewing classes into my schedule. So I thought, I'll work for the costume department. I'll learn how to sew that way. And that's kind of what happened.
Oh my goodness. I love that.
Yeah.
So you got paid for learning how to sew?
I did. Yeah, it was awesome. And I was under the tutelage of some of these ladies. I remember specifically Mrs. Sponseller. She was awesome. She would come over and just kind of hover over where I was working and
That
be
would
like,
make me nervous.
Yeah, it did. It made me very nervous until I got to know her, and I just realized she was there to help me. And so then she would be like, there's a faster way to do this, and she'd show me little tricks and things.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
so
it was really awesome.
You really feel like you learned.
I did. I learned a lot up there. I really did. And honestly, practice makes perfect. So doing the same things and just keeping on doing whatever project it might be, but you just learn to use a sewing machine, and you learn different tips and whatever, and it just makes things easier.
What do you do when somebody says, can you make this? And I don't have a pattern. This is just my vision. Like, obviously you are a creator because you can do that.
I would never consider myself an art person, but I am a creative person. So I like to think outside the box. And when someone comes up to me and says, I'd like you to create something like this, can you do it? The first thing that happens is I just get really excited. I just like figuring out puzzles, like how can I make that work? And I usually work backwards from when I look at whatever project it might be and say, okay, this is the end result. How can I get there? And I don't know. That's the way God made me. I think that my very first costume project I ever did for you was not a straight up pattern, which is like what I love. I like to create patterns or whatever. And you had me make these really long pants for Abraham Lincoln that was on stilts.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
So you just told me he's going to be on stilts. They need to be this tall. So I made pants for him, solid blue pants that were really long. And then we get there and they didn't fit him.
Oh, no.
They couldn't fit over top of the stilts. And so we had to make them wider, and it ended up being perfect. So what we ended up doing was we split straight down the front, straight down the sides, and straight down the back, and we added red stripes. Well, he was an Abraham Lincoln, so it was perfect, and it went right over, and it was awesome.
You were so brilliant.
So, it was super fun. I love figuring out things like that.
So do you think that your most challenging puzzle so far was the Mrs. Potts costume, or is it something else?
That's a good question. I feel like you've given me a couple that are kind of tricky and I had to figure out. Mrs. Potts was probably my most frustrating one.
Okay.
Because I would come up with what I thought was the solution, and then we would try it on, and then it would completely flop. And so then I was like, okay, we'll try something new. So then I would try another solution, and then it would almost work, and then it would break. And so that one was really frustrating. So I actually think probably Mrs. Potts was my most difficult, I would think.
And were you frustrated? What were the elements about it that you were trying to do?
So when I made Mrs. Potts, she was going to slowly transform into becoming more and more pot-like. So in doing that, we were trying to add things to her arms to stiffen her up and to her dress as well. And so what we wanted was it was almost like a dress, and the more she became like a pot, the more circular the bottom of her gown became. And so the idea originally was to make like some type of a drawstring that would pull up the bottom and kind of closing around this like cage that we had underneath. But the fabric was very heavy. And so a lot of the cages that we created weren't working. They just kept collapsing.
But the fabric was so beautiful.
It was so beautiful. It really was. It was very much like a pot.
Yes,
so
yes.
It was perfect. But it was very heavy. And so we just had to keep tweaking, and we finally figured it out. Yo was like awesome and helping me. Like he would pull out a new idea or like, here, why don't you try this? And he'd give me tubing, and we tried lots of things. But
the thing that we did not know is I think how heavy it was going to be for the actress that was playing.
Yeah.
And so she literally, once she got in it, she couldn't really get out of it for the run of the show.
I don't know how she did it.
And actually she said that she had to start wearing knee braces because
Really?
she's standing up the whole time. She can't sit
yeah.
in the pot. And so there were just different things that I didn't think about. I was just like, as a director, this is the vision I want. Can you do it? And you're like, yes, and I'll make it even better because I'll do this. And yeah. And then we're like, oh, and you're not going to sit down the whole rest of the show now. So sorry. But one of the reasons that I wanted Christina to come on the show is because we recently did Wizard of Oz, and our director, Jessica Means, had seen a transformation dress where Dorothy spins. These are very hot in the world right now, where she would spin and then all of a sudden the dress would be green instead of blue. And so, of course, who else could we ask to do it except for Christina? So she posted a little video of it on Instagram. Instagram or TikTok?
On Instagram. Yeah.
And it has already had how many views, Christina?
2.9 million.
Whoa!
Yeah. It was kind of crazy. Actually, when it happened, I didn't realize that it had taken off. Originally, when I took the video, I took it for you because I wanted you to see how it looked.
Which is amazing, which you will see.
It ended up turning out super awesome. But so I just did it to send the video to you. And then I was like, this is super cool. And I got it at a really nice angle.
Yeah.
And then I was able to tag fun music to it. And I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to post it on my Instagram, which is like, I think I have like 3 posts on it. Like I have like no posts. I created this account thinking, anytime I create something, I'm going to take a picture and post it on there because you forget all the things that you do. Yeah, you also forget to post to Instagram. Yeah. So anyway, but I was like, I don't want to forget this one. So I posted it, and then I kind of forgot about it because it was just for my friends and stuff.
And your mom.
Yeah, and my mom. And then I was with my family, and my brothers were from out of state. And I was like, oh, guys, look at this project I was doing for Overshadowed. It's this transformation dress. I took a video, and I pulled out my phone to show my brother. And he was like, Christina, did you see that? I was like, what? He's like, you have almost 1 million views. I was
crazy.
Like, what? And then it was like, you'd get on like, I stared at it for like the rest of the night. And I was like, guys, look at all these. It was so fun.
That is so
and then it
amazing.
slowly grew. Yeah, there was like a span of time. It was like a week that I got a million
So
views.
what do you think it is that people are finding so fascinating about that video?
I don't know. I think it's just kind of magical.
Yeah,
like
it
you don't
is.
really know what to expect, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, it's green.
Yeah.
So it's fun. Yeah.
What were your challenges in making that costume?
Oh, well, I didn't have a pattern. So the hardest part was figuring out how to get that top layer of the green dress tucked all inside of her bodice, and how to make it look closed on the sides and not like super obvious that we were hiding something. So I did not have a pattern. There wasn't really anything you could find online, but there was videos of other productions that had done it. And there was this one girl who had done it as a grad project. And she shows herself spinning, and then she shows about 4 pictures. So I think I watched that video like at least 40 times.
Wow.
Yeah, trying to see exactly like where it attached and all of that stuff, and where it was folded in, how high did it come, and how are the sleeves, and how did she pull it, and where did it like come apart, and I don't know. There's just a bunch of different things to like figure out and think through. And so pretty much I made one dress completely, just like you normally would a dress. And then I figured out how to layer this other dress on top. So it just was trial and error and a lot of ripping out seams. And
See, that's the reason I don't sew, because I don't like the whole ripping out. It's
your best friend.
Oh man, my grandmother was a seamstress, and so she would try to teach me how to sew, and she was a perfectionist. And so if there was one little stitch, she'd be like, "Nope, take it out," and I'd be like,
yeah. No, I'm not a perfectionist. Oh. I say perfectionists should stick to quilting.
I
don't quilt.
There you go. Yeah. As long as it works. The thing that I like so much about what you did is that some of the ones that I see that other amateur productions have done, not necessarily Wizard of Oz, but just that transformation idea dress, is that a lot of times it looks so bulky that you know when they come out, you're like, well,
yeah, I
know what's going to happen here. But you couldn't tell that from yours at all. It just, you just did a beautiful job.
I was actually really surprised that it was as smooth as possible. And I would say that was kudos to our stage manager, costume director for that one, because she was folding it in on itself every night. So she definitely mastered its like origami folding technique to get it all in there. Because when I first got the fabric, I had difficulty finding the correct fabric. And when I finally got it, it was a little heavier than I wanted, a little thicker than I wanted. And so I was really concerned about it. But we were able to fold it in. And then what we ended up doing was she puts it on at intermission, and we actually like pull it really tight on the sides, and we hooked it in the back to pull it in, and that helps to like give it a little bit of a form and not so much of a marshmallow look. But she's only on for a very short time, and then she would go off to the side wings. We'd pop the sides off, so I was completely disconnected on the side. So when she walked out, she kind of kept her hands to her side, and then she says her line, and she rips the
had
off,
no idea that she walked off and got unhooked. I did not know that. Wow.
So it just helped to pull her form in to give her a shape.
I think you're so brilliant, and I obviously want you a part of Overshadowed for the rest of your life, so I don't want you to go anywhere. But do you have any advice for people out there that may be thinking, I don't know how to sew, or maybe I would be interested in that, or, sewing for the theater? Like, do you have anything that you would like to share?
It doesn't have to be perfect. That's the biggest thing I've learned. If you look at my projects from afar, you're like, oh my word, it's so beautiful. I can never do that. And then if you look at it really close, it is not perfect. That's one reason why I love costume sewing, because it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to make it through the production, and it has to look good enough from, what is it? The 10-foot rule? Yeah, 10-foot rule. So I feel like costuming is actually and you get to do a lot of unique things. Another tidbit is don't be afraid of your sewing machine. I think that's number one reason most people don't sew, because it's kind of intimidating, but pick an easy project and just keep doing whatever easy project it is, like make a pillowcase or make a scrunchie. I mean, something little like that. Don't be intimidated by your sewing machine. And have fun. Like, pick something that you actually want to do, because if it's not something that interests you, then you're just going to put it down.
You're going to hate it. Mm-hmm. I think you're all going to be fascinated at seeing what Christina has done. And honestly, I can't wait till next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Until next time, this is just me.
And me.
Talking to you
from the wings.